So, how are the final few weeks of the year of the Great Humiliation treating you? I imagine you're feeling a little bit rough, but you're also feeling hella ready because fuck trying to exist in this hellscape and going on with the lunatics. And I'm very proud of you for absconding. I love a rebel with a cause. So, as you know, I talk a lot about astrologically, we are in the downfall of colonialism. And for me, the first phase is uniquely marked by how much it challenges our identities and how we build our identities and how we recognize ourselves. Because look at the wider picture, right? We are now existing in a time where the systems, the structures, all types of norms from education to healthcare to technology to media to arts, all of it, right? It's malfunctioning, and rightly as it should. We can't afford, and nor can we grow and prosper if we are trying to navigate life with the same kind of blueprint that was very much designed to keep us stuck, depleted, like engineer us into a lot of misery, right? But the issue is, when it's everything that we know, when it's everything that we have normalized, we've grown up in, and naturally it deeply influences us, it can be a real hit to our identities. Pay attention, right? And again, when I talk about colonialism, try your best not just to imagine white Europeans and white Americans. Colonialism has many different flavors, unfortunately, right? And it basically is the mother of every kind of fucking racism, religious extremism, xenophobia you could ever imagine, right? But going back to it, as these systems and structures glitch, think about how many people who basically have prided themselves in becoming like the perfect puppet or doll of that kind of oppression is also having a hard time. Look how people are not into their art. Look how they don't want to follow their politics. Look how we don't even trust their information. Look how we are no longer willing to participate with societies that are pretty much championed by their blueprint. However, this is actually a really great time for us to be liberated. So again, from 2025 to 2028, there's something known as the karmic prison that's opened, right? And what's really distinct about this time is it shows as Saturn, aka the planet of illusions, human misery, bad friends, very, very regrettable fucking movements in life, goes through the 9 types of Pisces, which is all kinds of endings, right? And also ancestral karmas. It talks about time, right? You're going to have these group of people who make these really ignorant and foolhardy choices, and they will make them with the utmost conviction. But the issue is, symbolically, or God forbid, quite literally, they end up imprisoning themselves to a fucking hellscape. And also, they become the reason that their future descendants absolutely hate them, because everything you decided in 2025, 2028 deeply changes the future, right? So again, I want you to know, if you are having identity issues at the moment, that's fucking fantastic, right? Because that means the soul was like, listen here, bitch, we cannot go along with this shit. This is not for us. And in fact, wake up, ho, we're not going down with the sinking ship. And that's exactly where I want you to be. Because the reason I crafted this kind of series on my YouTube was, listen, the downfall of colonialism, it's playing out for a few decades. So, you know, grab onto your hat, cowgirl. We got a long rodeo ahead. But I think the most important thing to understand is you should not feel scared of change, or, I don't know, stay with a sinking ship, because you don't know what it is to be you outside of this very much engineered suffering, right? And I talk a lot about, you know, our liberation is actually very uniquely linked to our consumption. And one thing different kinds of oppressors do is they kind of like kidnap you or keep you stuck by, I think, flooding you with consumerism. You think the things that you buy are your identity. You will not abscond from oppression and fascism because you think it has like financial ramifications on you, right? So again, there's this very intentional design of consumerism keeping you hostage and in bondage. And I don't even know what part this is of the identity series, but this part, I wanted to concentrate on things that you can do that are not consumerism, right? And I want you to understand how much your identity can be defined by other things that is not linked to your consumption. Because if you can now, if you like this part of the exercise, moving into the future, I promise you, right, not only will you do spectacular things and contribute in, I just think in like actually memorizing ways, you are going to feel a lot better for it, right? But you know the routine. Go and grab a cup of cha, get comfortable. Let's have a candid cosmic chit chat about what it means to know ourselves outside of consumerism.
The damage is done, baby.
So currently Rahu is going through the 9 types of Aquarius. And when you look at the Aquarius nakshatras as a whole, it's a delicious time of innovation, of community, of healing. And one thing I've always found so unique when you're studying kind of like the Aquarius nakshatras, not only is it this idea of like riveting new information and challenging things and advancing things, but there's almost this idea of like moving away from ignorance, from lies. Like a lot of impressive whistleblowers and investigative journalists tends to be heavy in Aquarius, right? So for me, as I look at everything, yes, this is a time where naturally all of our identities are being challenged, but it's meant to be a catalyst to get us to start creating, contributing, and if you like, taking away the control, the structures and the systems of our oppressors. Because the reasons we are so stuck now is because they design everything, they create everything, they control everything, right? And instead of being a consumer, it's saying, listen, wake up. Don't enjoy the quality of this anymore. This doesn't feel so good anymore. You don't trust this anymore. But in that energy, you can't just say dissatisfied. You have to get up and do something that creates dissatisfaction. Look at it deeper because I made a whole ass book about it. So Rahu symbolizes emptiness, firstly, okay? So this is a time where all the things that used to bring you safety, pleasure, inspiration, whatever, right? It no longer hits the same. Think of it like a little bit more realistically. It's hard to go and enjoy your like weekly little sweet treat when you can barely afford to pay the bills. It's hard to feel ambitious and want to build and contribute to industries and sectors when in real time you are seeing the corruption between kind of big businesses and governments, right? It makes it hard to keep going along with the bullshit, the propaganda, the manipulation, the lies, right? The illusions, the narratives are not engaging you in such a way that it's hard to be indifferent, right? Even if you are not the most political person, even if you are not the most well-informed person, you cannot ignore the literal spike in your dissatisfaction. And that spike in your dissatisfaction is meant to catalyst you into doing some shit, right? And also, I think we're seeing more and more, or maybe a more serious note, that in order to be stable, in order to have good well-being, most like physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, you cannot trust these lot. You cannot, like it's all, if you like, empty promises, and it's just not a good investment for anybody, right? But the issue is we don't know what life is without their oppression, but we're going to create a new one, okay? The next thing is, look, Rahu deals with this idea of a radical transformation of the mind. So this can be both positive, but also overwhelming. So the natural positive is, when you truly hit rock bottom, when you have lost so much faith in stuff that you grew up trusting, knowing, and just like, it's all that you know, right? When that is deeply obliterated, when like the weaknesses are shown in that, the roots of what that is shown, the intention of why that's all you know is shown, it's the most freeing thing. Because be honest, so many of us go ahead with lifestyles, habits, like our paths in lives because we think that's all that is available to us. And often, whether we want to admit it or not, there is so much like subliminal fear sent to us that if you abscond, if you pick something that isn't a part of the choices that I am presenting to you, it's not going to end well. You can't be prosperous here, right? We'll isolate you, we'll demonize you and all of that. So again, for me, whilst it's really easy to see how this can be an overwhelming time, right? it's also a really freeing time because you just know you can't trust them. And there's nothing here, it's empty, it's not working. And again, to go along with them just doesn't make sense anymore, right? And I think the more you free yourself up from kind of their coercion, their manipulation and their control, the more you actually see, I have other choices, or there's other ways of doing stuff. And over time, do you know what it is? Your mind opens, your heart opens, your soul opens. And that's what I'm saying. Don't fear the destruction of the things that we're seeing. I think it's very necessary, right? And also, I think there are like sharper lessons, because again, going back to this idea that Rahu represents a radical transformation in mind, look around you. Look at how the religious extremism, the fascism, like the actual, I don't know, I want to say stupidity, but like it is like that deep. Like, look at how it is rotting people's brains to the point they no longer believe science, to the point they can't even see their hate is destroying their economies. They cannot see that their own hate is making them unlikable in other places in the world, hence more hate. Like, you are literally seeing, if you go along with the oppressor and you align with their fascism, their propaganda, all their empty promises, like whatever, you are radically going to be transformed into a nincompoop. I'm being polite about it, but like, I think you're seeing in real time how going along with their beliefs is destroying people. I have big predictions about environmental disasters, healthcare crises, education crises that are coming. And I strongly believe it stems from the decisions people make in 2025 to 2028. And whilst they're making these stupid decisions, they're 100% going to think they're in the right and they're creating a prosperous future, right? And what they're not understanding, because again, Vedic astrology is a religious practice. God hugely shapes the way that we view why we think what goes down. I always say, famously, God is a comedian. And you will make these decisions thinking, aha, and then isn't it funny, the things that you wished on to the victims of your hate, that becomes your reality, right? So I think make room for that. And then most importantly, Rahu actually represents renunciation. So Rahu is very interesting because it also deals with this idea of like overconsumption, right? And again, just imagine you eat your favorite dessert, your favorite meal and snacks every day on the hour, right? And eventually you get to the point where it's like, or again, because you have, we'll say, gouged on it per se, you get to a point where it starts affecting your mental well-being, your physical well-being, all of that. So then once you've had your fill, if you like, you go, fuck this shit, it's not worth it. Or the pace that we're consuming in A, B, and C is not worth it. So for me, again, when I look at Rahu going through Aquarius, it brings up so many issues where I think we learn in so many ways how we've been manipulated, how in so many ways our consumptions of certain things is not helping ourselves, the world, society. And yeah, it brings up very, very uncomfortable realizations, but that's a chance to pivot. Because the same thing that represents desires and greed and criminality also creates innovation, saints, social reform. So that's what I'm saying. Now that we've identified the poison is consumerism, we understand how consumerism is linked to colonialism. If you haven't, go back to the series, watch it from the start. Now let's talk about what we can do instead of the consumption, right? Because now we're in a place where, number one, whatever they're trying to sell to us doesn't fulfill us, right? Number two, we're changing so much that, you know, thank God, the engagement's just not there. The appeal is not there. The going along is not there. Being influenced is not being there. So this is a great time, right, to open it. And also renunciation is going to lead to a lot of good things, right? But we've got to get there. So now let's talk about what we can do instead of consumery, right? Because again, when you leave them to create stuff, there's always going to be fucking drama. But if you take away the creativity or you start offering up shit that's alternative, whatever they have going down, isn't it funny the shit that can be achieved? Saying all of that, let's start analyzing each and every Aquarius nakshatra and how to leverage what they offer to the table to do something a little bit different. Let's begin by analyzing Dhanisha. This is Aquarius type 1 to 2, right? Now, Dhanisha is all about creation. That's our first point. Instead of consuming, let's create stuff. Now, number one, Dhanisha is ruled by Mars. So that's adventure, that's courage, and also it's our strength. There is a direct correlation between decreasing your consumption of whatever the colonizer is pointing out. And I mean, like, everything, my lovelies, from the food to the art, the fucking like software services. You will notice the more you take control of what you consume, and also you shift the consuming energy to creating, you get stronger in your well-being. You feel better mentally, you feel better emotionally, physically, right? Because you're not just sitting there and fucking taking in all the shit they're giving you. Like, and even prosperity wise, right? Your financial well-being improves. Let's get to creating. That first hit of Rahu being in Dhanisha is going to be like a divine hit of inspiration. And it's going to say, listen, instead of settling for mediocrity, instead of just going along with this bullshit, let's reclaim the narrative. May I remind you, Dhanisha is associated to the religious scriptures about Narasimha, right? So Narasimha is an incarnation of God, and he comes back into the world when essentially a tyrant king who's made this kind of pact that no one can destroy me, not man, not animal, all this kind of shit. God literally comes back as the one loophole that goes against all the criteria of what could not destroy him, right? He says, I can't be destroyed at day or night, so God reappears at dusk, right? But there's this idea, do not let the bastards grind you down. Do not let them scare you out of, there's not more room for more than us. Like, there's so much here where a certain anger is meant to hit you, but it's meant to trigger creation, right? And also, if you look at Dhanisha a little bit deeper, right? That Mars meeting with Aquarius energy tends to symbolize this idea of struggling to handle inner and external demons, right? So inner demons is maybe a lack of self-value, a fear mindset, just stuff where you feel like you can't get up and do, right? And then let's just say the external demon is materialism, it's consumption, right? And that's the thing. When you study colonialism, right, and I always emphasize, you must understand colonialism is a financial venture, and it is very much a engineered war to stop people having access to resource, wealth, knowledge, skills, all that, so someone else can steal that and extract the wealth, right? Do you understand how powerful it is to create? However you want to create. I'm not saying everyone has to pick up a paintbrush and be Pablo Picasso, but you creating is the first hit when it comes to the downfall of colonialism. In fact, let me walk you through a few examples of colonial empires and why they stopped their victims of creating and the impact that had on our societies today, and also the story of reclaiming, because this is nothing new. The whole point of Vedic astrology is you repeat until the karma is resolved and the energy transforms into something else. So why not take the energy of things being stolen from you, of you being depleted, and turn it into prosperity, turn it into your own fate, because they only have fortune for as much as you pay them and for as much as you allow them to steal. So when you cut off that path, isn't it funny what can happen? Now, I need you to understand why cultivating your creativity is a huge part of reclaiming or like re-understanding your identity away from all the bullshit. So let's look at history. When you study colonial empires or any kind of oppressive regime, they are not angry at what their victims are producing and how they're producing it. Their venom lies in, they want to make money from it, right? And because this is not stuff that is innately theirs, they don't understand it, there's a lack of education, there's a clear fucking like skill gap, right? They have to find out ways to hijack it so they can have that wealth. So let's start by actually studying maybe the British Empire and what they did across South Asia, particularly maybe with Bengal and Punjab, right? So famously, when the Brits came in, they demonized these groups' creativity, especially when it comes to textiles and fabric, right? I'm talking about they're saying these textiles are like unholy, they're immodest, like all this shit, right? And they amp up this kind of culture of fear, right? And then the gag is, not only are you like scaring everybody and making them feel bad about their designs and like actively beating up, torturing people for wearing the outputs of that creativity, you then slide into phase 2. They started taking people's machineries, right? They started picking up machines. They were cutting off the thumb of certain textile creators. And the whole thing was they're forcing them to eventually to come to work for them. Because in the backdrop of this, they're engineering a famine, right? They're committing genocide. So this is what I talk about. When you look at creativity, it is some of the most innate things to you, but we still exist in a culture which has stemmed from that time of cutting off that medium for you, well, symbolically and hopefully not literally like our ancestors, but you get it, right? So then imagine, right? They've been demonized, then they've been physically assaulted, then they've been put into economic desperation, great. So their only way of utilizing their skills and making money is now to go and work for those British companies, right? And then it gets even more sour. So you're now draining them of their skills. They don't really make any of the money. I think it was something like, there used to be an import duty of something like 70 to 80% of British textiles, which again is these people's work. And it's just like this huge ass greed and rigged program. Even when I look at other notes, right? They literally started killing off other agricultural or natural resources so they could cultivate more of the crops that created textiles for the British Empire. And can you imagine that all stems from seeing the creativity of these people being so mad, not at their skills and what they're creating, but the fact that they can't do it, so therefore they can't make money. And then you begin this violent journey of stealing. And I want you to know that journey has not fucking ended. When you buy fast fashion and it's Bengali fucking kids in these factories that are like modern day fucking plantations, we can only be in the downfall of colonialism if it never went anywhere, Hibiscus. So that's what I'm saying. The first thing you can do instead of consuming is go back to creating, because there is unfinished business there. In fact, maybe next, let's have a look at Belgium and the rubber in Congo, right? So for me, the Belgian Empire does not get enough fucking heat and as it should. So I'm trying to do this in a way that's like PG and delicate. So essentially, the ruler of the Belgian Empire was what we can only describe as Satan himself. Like, the shit he did to Congo and that happens today is insane. In fact, let's get into it. So, essentially, the Belgian Empire forced something known as a rubber quota. So in order to make sure you were not flogged, tortured, essentially fucked up and genocided, you as Congolese people had to give the Belgian Empire a said amount of rubber. The thing is, there's even accounts when you study the Belgian Empire and the history, they would literally cut off people's fucking hands if they did not give them rubber, right? And the thing that's so weird here is, you have these people who naturally have a resource. They've been using it however they see fit, but they haven't exploited it. Like, the relationship between the Congolese and the things they were producing in rubber wasn't particularly high. It served a purpose, but it wasn't like all RE, right? Then you get to a point when the empire has seen something of value in something, maybe, it's in their day to day. They don't see it's whatever. Then you end up in a position where not only are you torturing people for resources, the thing that I was thinking about, they literally cut off their creativity to make sure that they could only do what served empire. They're literally de-skilling them because understandably, you now have this large community only putting its energy to what makes it survive. So that's what I'm saying. When you look at, how do I rebuild my identity? How do I make sure that I am living and moving and grooving in such a way that it is not the fucking strings of my oppressor? The first one is creativity. And even the nature of Dhanishta is a fierce one, right? Dhanishta is competitive. It has conviction, like it's come to win. And don't you think there's something even now when we look at the economy and the politics of big business, they're trying to subliminally tell you the only way you will survive now in our regimes and in our societies is if you join the labor force for these positions. Anything outside of this, you will suffer, you will be isolated, like you're not gonna do well. So the fucked up thing is, you're all panicking. When it's like, fuck panicking, they're telling you they're broke, they're lost, they don't have anything. So now they have to scare you into rebuilding the economy so they can keep exploiting the way that they used to. When the matter of the fact is, what are we? Astrologically in the downfall of colonialism. Time is up. So you reclaiming your creativity, however that looks for you, in any industry, in any sector, in any walk of life, is one of the most badass and activisty things you could do, right? Building on from this, maybe this is the last example. Let's look at the Spanish Empire and the minds of what we know as like Latin America, South America, right? So when the Spaniards came over, they essentially found all the rich resources, oil, silver, gold, like fuckloads, right? And then essentially the Spaniards, they created a model where essentially they, how would you put it? Theirs was more funky because they used religious terrorism and kind of superstition to spook people into thinking, if you didn't give us your resources or you didn't pick up the skills that allow us to attract these resources, like the devil's getting you, it's a meaningful, like a meaningless life. Like it was well psychological, right? And then the other thing that was really interesting is, even though these communities in these lands are obviously inherently rich, the Spaniards then put, I think it was like, restrictions on trade. So they literally said, if you fucking trade with anybody else, we're gonna fuck you up. And then they controlled the ports. You know, when I was doing the video about I haven't released it yet. I'm doing a video about Puerto Rico soon, FYI, right? Borinque. I literally was like, the name that we know Borinque as literally means rich poor. And I was like, that's terrible, devilish work. And we should probably call it by its actual name that the people call it, Borinque, right? And again, the other thing that's really interesting is, so not only have you hijacked their creativity, you're now forcing their creativity only to match labor outputs. Can I emphasize something? Whether you're looking at the British Empire, the Belgian Empire, the Spanish Empire, all of that money was used to fund their broke asses and what? Their wars. May I remind you, right, we're also in a time astrologically where the ancestral Karma treasure chest is open. So their talents and skills finally come back to us, but also their unfinished business becomes ours. And when you look around hibiscuses, can you see any similarities? Actually, in the name of creativity is power, let's look at Dhanishta individuals. So consider Megan Thee Stallion, Michael Jackson, and Yves Saint Laurent, right? So two very famed musicians and a hell of a fucking fashion designer. Now, when you look at Dhanishta, its power is the power to bring fame and recognition, right? Regardless of your outputs, I'm telling you now, whatever you feel inspired to create between now until like early 2027, get to fucking work, because you have no idea, not just about how it will change the trajectory of your life, but what it's going to do for the wider game plan that's at play, right? I'm telling you now, in really difficult times, even the most ordinary people become extraordinary. God can't let you know who his top players are going to be. He has to conceal them until it's game time, right? God sets you up to win. I often think about Arjuna and Krishna, right? Think about how long they were in hiding for. Think about how long their skills were slept on. And when it was time, boom, you're one of the same hibiscuses, right? So Even then, if you consider the symbol for Dhanishta, it's musical instruments. This usually has like 3 meanings. So number 1 is learn to follow God's timing, divine timing. When it is your time, everything will come together to make it happen for you, right? When we force stuff, when we can't get in line with the flow of life, often that's when a lot of shit goes down. That's when we can go to do something and we fall in our faces. So therefore, everything has its timing. And right now, this overwhelming feeling of destruction or of betrayal, of lies, of hate, all of that is divinely orchestrated, no pun intended, right? Number 2, which I think will mean a lot to all of you, difficult musical instruments, right? Listen, no one becomes a perfect player overnight. And also, don't look at it that, how the fuck do I take a recorder, a guitar, and a drum? Like, this is all gonna sound horrible together. No, you learn to harmonize. So this is the thing. Often when you guys look at life, you go, oh, I am this person. I only have this in talents and skills. So this is what I'm capable of. When it's like, no, actually, you are a person that comes with many experiences. You actually have many different learning abilities. Tap into all of those, create, and then this beautiful thing comes. Right? And then I think thirdly, when you also look at Dhanishta's musical instruments, it's this idea also of I think finding motion with what we have, right? You have to become moving. There's no point in knowing a lot. There's no point in practicing a lot if when it comes time to perform, you're not out there, right? And I think it's learning how to feel graceful and confident and composed in what you do, right? But either way, those musical instruments tell you it's go time. Let's get out there. Let's start moving and grooving. So again, let's think about those individuals. So Dhanishta, as you can imagine, is a very fiery energy. It's a very devotional energy too, right? It's extremely disciplined. You get a lot of athletes that have Dhanishta. So look at the trajectory of those 3 individuals, right? Meghan, Michael, Saint Laurent, they all start life in, I would say, like pretty intense conditions where they know if they want out of certain environments, they are going to have to work, right? No one's going to hand it to them. It won't be easy and it'll be very demanding. And the thing is, they're also in these individuals, it's just this radical self-belief that if I put in the time, the energy, and I get to a certain place within myself, it is going to happen for me. Now, no one sets out to be an icon, no one sets out to be a trendsetter, but we are often captivated by these people because there is such a flow of creativity coming out of these people, right? And the thing is, all 3 of these have used their creativity for such great causes, right? YSL was one of the first European houses that had models of ethnic backgrounds on his catwalks, right? He engineered one of the first tuxedos for women so they felt more empowered and kind of more during a time of Tradwives 1.0, right? Even look at Michael, right? This is a man who, again, is coming to be an icon in a time of like some of the nastiest segregation and racial hate in America, right? And I also think, like, if you look at Meghan, the tones of gender and race, like, it's so funny how stuff that maybe we think is superficial and not that serious can actually give us the platforms to talk about serious stuff. And all it takes is you locking in. And the thing is, you have to have confidence in what you have. The thing that makes Dhanishta so like, right? And the reason the power to bring fame is all over its Shakti is because there's just this kind of quiet understanding. Once it finds its musical instrument, it will sincerely take the time to learn how to play it, right? And then once it learns how to play it, it's actually really good at harmonizing with others. And then over time, what happens is like this really sweet little student who just wanted to learn something becomes the maestro, right? And I just don't think you should sleep on the power of creativity, especially in current times. Like, if I could give you any advice, stop consuming people and you create. Instead of following, like, I was thinking about this the other day when people talk about like fashion and stuff, right? You do not build an identity of buying stuff and it makes you that person, right? You cannot buy yourself an identity. You cannot style an identity. An identity only comes from living, from what you are doing, from what you are believing, right? I think as much as you can, stop watching other people create and you start showing up. And don't worry about perfection. It will naturally happen over time. And the things that you feel inspired to create, do not forget, Dhanishtha is ruled by Mars. That's a warrior energy. That's a standing up to a bully energy. You might not see the dots between what you're meant to create and a bigger picture, but it will be revealed in due time. Rahu symbolizing provoking things so radical change can occur. Do not underestimate who you are and what you bring to the table, but for fuck's sake, get to creating. And with that, let's explore the rest of the Aquarius nakshatras. Now we have Hibiscus. That's Aquarius type 3 to 6. Hibiscus Shakti is the power to heal. And interestingly enough, it deals with growing things, healing things, and uncovering truths. So again, let's take it back to colonialism. When you look at colonial empires, they actively seek to destroy any knowledge people would have about caring and growing stuff, whether it's other people, whether it's crops, whatever it is, right? But they're actively trying to take away anything that teaches people how to nourish themselves. Because what is colonialism, right? It's all about money. So it wants to take away all the knowledge, all the resources, all the skills that allows people to feed themselves and not be dependent on their hands. The colonizer will always try to become everything to you so it can have resource. So as soon as you cut away from it, even when you start decreasing the amount you consume from the colonizer and whatever the fuck its outputs are, watch how you grow, watch how you heal, watch how all of a sudden the shit you were really confused about, you have the utmost of clarity. Hibiscus is. Now, it's really important to understand why colonial empires seek to disarm people from understanding how to care and grow things. So, number one, a lot of it is about psychologically disarming people. Because the thing is, when you have that kind of knowledge, you also know how to protect yourself. And they really do not want to give you any form of protection against their harm. And again, the harm is rooted in extracting wealth. So whether that's being able to exploit you for labor and you normalizing that fucking pain, whether that's about convincing you that, yeah, you should pay £60 for a medicine that literally comes from fucking nature. The list goes on, right? But it's really about fucking you up so you have no defenses to fight back or even realize you're being poisoned and harmed. The second point I had was about cultural supremacy, right? So again, really, it's interesting when you study different empires, right? One thing they seek to do is even change the definitions of what it means to care and grow for things, right? And it's so weird because they'll spend so much time telling victims of oppression, the way that you look after one another, the way that you grow things, you nurture things, it's all wrong, it's all satanic, it's all fucked up, all that. It's like the same rhetoric, rinse and repeat, right? But eventually they go on because they've diseased not only the victims of their oppression, but their own societies. They always have a 360 way of coming back to the victims of oppression's way of caring and understanding and growing things, right? And again, the reason they don't want you to have knowledge about what it is to care for things or even be involved with the act of caring things, growing for things, is because they need to install into you whatever makes the empire run, right? And they cannot afford for you to have knowledge, skills, or be involved in any activities that go against that. Hibiscuses. Then the third thing, again, as you can understand, is economic reorientation. So look at it like this. When I stop you understanding how to care and grow things, that also means I have more control over what you are creating with that care and growth. So again, I always bring everything back to agriculture. Obviously, can you tell I'm a Punjabi girl? But it's interesting how they will kill off other crops just so the only crops that grow are stuff that sells for their empires. It's intentional. And also think of it like this. If I'm designing naturally a violent society, and I'm seeking to destroy things so I can maintain a sense of power, I'm not going to want you to understand how you can heal yourself, because also you being in such violence, you being so disparaged, you not knowing how to heal and grow stuff allows me to keep making money. So again, this is a superficial example, but look at the supermarkets, right? Look how much they charge us for food. Because the prices of food are determined by the markets. The markets are owned by the oppressors. And again, people who have grisly fucking intentions. What happens if not only do we stop shopping wherever you're shipping out, but if we actually knew how to create our own food or, you know, certain basics, would you really be able to charge that size? Would it still be a profitable business for you? No. So you're trying to cut off everything. So you are the only supplier of things. That's why I'm saying it begins with creation. Because if you can create, you're then going to understand how to grow, nurture, heal, and educate people about the truth, right? And then, as you can tell, dependence, right? So when you look at everything, Rahu, when it goes through Hibiscus, is highlighting to all of us why they flood us with so much consumerism is to stop us fundamentally understanding how to care for ourselves and others. And in line with that, it stops our ability to grow stuff. Do you see how it all begins with hijacking people's creativity? Why do you think they were cutting off fucking people's thumbs who wanted to create fabrics and textiles? But all of a sudden you can come and work for me, long as you do it for me and only me. And then at the time when you're cutting off that creativity, over generations, you're cutting off the knowledge source that lets them recuperate. And all of a sudden, the only way that we understand the world is through the oppressor's lens. And their knowledge is always going to be dog shit because it's violent and it's stolen and it's not full. It's all designed to glitch. And I'm very happy everything is glitching Hibiscus is. As always, let's look at some historical examples, because what I'm telling you about history still exists today. So let's start with the British Empire, as always. So essentially, the British Empire was fascinated by the medical knowledge that ran throughout Asia, right? Different communities had such rich understandings of how mental health and emotional health impacted physical health. They had an understanding that certain lifestyles worked really well for certain energies, but didn't work great for other energies. Some of the first plastic surgeries happened in South Asia, right? So look at it like this. Number one, the Brits famously not only kind of discredited this really rich medical research and knowledge that had been cultivated over fucking centuries, even before they became British, right? They then began replacing these really rich teachers and kind of knowledge sources with their own schools and colleges. And the issue with that is, you end up in this really weird dichotomy where not only are you losing touch with valuable years of scientific research, right? But the knowledge that's being consumed is heavily tainted by racism, right? So you're now working with a disadvantaged lens. And also you're working with a lens where those people only I say roughly kind of, because I don't even think they know how to heal their own people, but they only know diseases, conditions on their own white bodies, right? And even then, there's a lack of depth of nuances, right? And then everyone moving forward in terms of being victims of oppression is only given what the colonizer understands and wants you to understand. Because who's going to tell you the reason you have so many chronic health issues is because you have a lifestyle that AKA is created by them and it literally physically makes you sick. That's why you can never lose weight. That's why you have a lot of fatigue. You're not naturally like that. And actually it's nothing to do with your food. This is the reaction of the terrorism of oppression and their normalizing of labor exploitation. Food for thought. And then also, it's this weird thing of like, then putting in supremacy. Because tell me, right, you create medicines from the plants that grow in this fucking country and the plants that we know inside out, right? And this shit is for free or we do it communally, right? But for some reason, when you take the plant and you put it into form, that's meant to be all of a sudden more profitable and superior than us, who has a natural source of that thing. Do you see, like, even in cutting people off from caring and growing things, how much it feeds into illness, fatigue, and that's intentional, because when people feel fatigue, when people feel like people don't care about them, when people feel like they don't know how to grow stuff, it stops them from opposing oppression. Come on, my hibiscuses, right? Next, maybe let's look at the Portuguese in Brazil, right? So again, the Portuguese destroyed so many rich native languages of Brazil. And then when you destroy the language, you also destroy them understanding the knowledge about how to care and grow for things, right? And then on top of that, you had essentially missionaries come into Brazil, and they forced people to abandon their ways of communal caring and growing things. This is my whole thing, right? When you talk about rebuilding your identities, the reason I say stop looking at consumerism is because that's all the colonizer wants, is for you to consume and not to know. When you go out of your way to learn how to create, then you learn how to care for people and things, and also do it through a communal lens. And then on top of that, it gives you some sort of space and support to grow. Nothing could be a bigger threat to their oppression, because everything they design is basically about blocking out knowledge so you don't think they're top dog. So you think anything outside of them isn't as great. Do you know how devious it is when you look at people and branding? Like, what makes water more elite in an Avion bottle than water from A, B, and C? Like, do you understand how deep it runs? So again, curing your consumerism deeply, like, go and learn to create things, go and learn to care for whatever you want to care for, whether it's a person, whether it's a cause, fucking plants, maybe a talent and skill, right? And then once you have that, learn how to grow things. Talent, skill, nature, crops, whatever. But my God, allow your identity to be deeper than whatever you're consuming from the colonizer. And the fact that you would even define your identities through consumerism is crazy, right? And then the other thing I was thinking about in real time, and this is something I think we need to currently think about, is colonial empires would go out their way to essentially kidnap elders, teachers, anyone that you would kind of assume to be a knowledge source. So you would quite violently sever the ties of the next generations having even a minimal chance of creating something that's profitable and safe for themselves. Really, even as I make this video, I'm like, oh my God, they literally flood us with consumerism to keep us stupid so we can never be a threat to their exploitative ways. That's heinous, right? And then the final thing I want to talk about was the French in Algeria. Again, the French and the Belgian empires do not get enough hate for me when it comes to their imperialist, slavey, nasty colonial ways, right? So the French were actually more devious than I think a lot more empires. So I'll give you the first thing. So there was something known as the native code. I think that's what it translates into English, right? And essentially what it was like these bunch of laws that stopped Algerians from congregating and caring for one another, or being able to share knowledge about growing certain crops. And again, it was really rooted in, they had this fear, if these people were caring for each other or exchanging knowledge around things that they were growing or creating, it was a guise for political opposition against revolution, against rebellion. So do you think about it today? Think about why they get so nervous at creating laws or stopping people from sharing like skills and all of that, because in their heads they literally think you're coming together to overthrow them. But you would have no fears if you knew you didn't do anything bad that needed overthrowing, right? But just keep that in mind, because they are intentionally criminalizing knowledge and skills and just like basic things to keep you weak. Like, it's actually insane. Imagine I said, like, oh, everyone come to my house, I'm going to teach you how to bake, like, some sort of cake. And then the police bust through the door because they're like, illegal activity. And I'm like, we're just teaching each other how to bake. It's a form of love. She'll learn how to feed 5 babies for A, B, and C. Like, what's the issue? And they're like, no, we think other things are happening. Like, it's so fucking deep rooted. following on from that, literally, they were attacking family and women, right? So you've got to remember, if we go back to this idea of caring for things, it's socially engineered that victims of oppression become less caring, right? What's his name? Frantz Fanon actually talks a lot about this, right? He talks about the psychological tools of colonialism. And a lot of it is rooted in making the people cannibalize on one another. Like, again, don't you think it's weird? We live in a time where people belong to certain groups and they think buying products or looking after themselves in a way that's kind of like native to their people is like not as serious, not as cool, not as good, but you will then pay someone like $1,000 to do shit your nan does for free with like a $4 tub of coconut oil. Make it make sense, right? And again, that's what they're saying. Care is a form of resistance. When you read Frantz Fanon's work, he's literally telling you that in caring for one another, it's one of the most scariest resistances to the colonizer because you are not dividing up. There will always be more of you than there will be of them. And also you're not falling for the propaganda of like hate and fear. Like it strengthens you. You've got to remember, the reason we're all suffering now is so much of our identities are shaped by fear. Each and every one of us, I think about so much, what conversations would we have publicly? What art would we create? How would we learn? What would we do if we were not scared about the retaliation of the oppressor? I'm going to say it again. The reason we're in the downfall of colonialism is because it hasn't gone anywhere. Hibiscus is, right? Rahu and Aquarius is intentionally scaring you so it invokes the creation tool in you. And with that creation tool, you will create care. You will start growing things again, but we have to get you moving, right? And maybe... even then, I think about when you look at the French Empire, not only were they terrorizing every element where people were caring for one another, and then that was also causing issues because then people were losing knowledge on how to grow stuff. The third phase was obviously they're stealing up all the land. And once they've stolen up all the land, you basically steal the mediums and spaces where people actually have the ability to care and grow things. Look how all bloody engineered it is. To be fair, right? What I've just said to you, you can see it in the modern day, right? Think about neocolonialism, right? So what's happening right now? Think about the global food system. Bro, it's dog shit that you expect to eat exotic fruits Monday to Friday every season of the year. But meanwhile, farmers in those native countries where the fruits are coming from are literally living in modern day plantations. They're not being fairly paid. And it's like the whole of the global south has to live in so horror so you can consume the way that you want. Deep it, like actually deep it. That's what I'm saying. Your consumption is linked to your liberation because Hibiscus is, for as long as we consume in a certain way, the modern day oppressors, and again, don't get caught up in skin color because a lot of the modern day oppressors will be our own people, right? They will use that as a guise to continue the exploitation because there's money in it. And then what's so fucked, and if you like, is like the metamorphosization and the deep psychological grip of it all. They will tell us because it's our people that own these businesses in A, B, and C, it's great representation, but it's not. It's not. We have just become our oppressors and it's really fucking lame, right? That's what I'm saying. The downfall of colonialism is so much in the systems, the structures, the cultures, the approaches to life. And only when they are addressed, and you don't want reform because reform means it's still in place. We want complete new creation of something else. Then we're in the business of rocking and rolling, right? Because it will always keep collapsing because it's exploitative. It doesn't know how to grow. It doesn't know how to sustain. There's no meaningful deep roots. It will always collapse on itself. So even then, it's in our interest to be different because this shit is just not going to work. And think of it now. There's so many of you, right, who have underplayed the actual political violence that has been active for fucking decades, right? And it's always about, but it's fine because it doesn't affect my paycheck. It's fine because we have this shitty little house that's overvalued. It's fine. Like, oh my God, like it actually makes me so sick, right? And you only care now because your pensions are under threat. I was gonna say, like, you only care now because of your babies, but be honest, right? Loads of people do projecting. The shit that I'm hearing when it comes to tax reforms, I'm like, y'all are only mad because now you don't get to have the greedy ways that you thought, right? But like, I look at all of it and I'm like, this will always collapse in itself. It's inherently designed to be thievery across several boards. Chuck it away, create something new, you know? The next one was going to be the pharmaceutical industry. I think this even ties into intellectual property, right? So I want you to think about, okay, so we know colonial empires intentionally destroyed and tried their hardest to suppress, because don't forget, Hibiscus is hidden truths, like clarity, revealing shit, right? So you go on this violent campaign of basically making sure we don't know how to look after ourselves, we don't know how to grow anything and all of that, right? But you then take all of the ancestral knowledge or even stuff that you know today works for our people and you rebrand it and you claim it's your own. There's a deeper conversation to have at a later date about why you shouldn't even work for their companies. Can I remind you, right? I think it's really, really funny. Like, my time in corporate is over, right? But towards the end of my career, I was literally being offered filthy fucking money to show organizations how to keep their people engaged. Like, even when, even as of last summer, I was getting people like message me and be like, Rani, would you be free for consultancy work, right? And I was literally looking at this. I was like, oh, the downfall of colonialism is definitely starting up, because they were in a point now where people, it didn't matter what money you gave them, what arrangements they gave them, they fundamentally didn't want to work for these companies because people's consciences were, and they also were coming to the point, fuck you, I'm the one with the skills and talent, I can literally escape this and create by myself, or I can go and partner up with a bunch of other people and we can use this for good instead of you exploiting us. Because this is the thing, you're seeing the same framework Hibiscus is. Big companies are modern day fucking colonizers and slave owners, because you are scaring the working force into thinking there is no future and prosperity without belonging to you, when the truth is your money doesn't exist without us. Wake up, Hibiscuses. And then finally, I think maybe it's 2 points. So number one is probably like the governance of oppressors. So for me, like, one thing I'm finding as I talk to people from like different countries and stuff, because honestly, my day to day is wild. I think about it. I talk to like at least 6 people from 6 different countries every day, like nearly like 7 days a week, every year, right? And the one thing that has really changed my mind, so you'll hear me say before, like, I really believe in globalization. And I think the more that I learn about the realities of it, I don't. What I believe in is local power, local people, and their ability to be able to share whatever they would like with the wider world, and for it to be a nurturing ecosystem and not an exploitative one. And I have huge issues that it's usually Western governments or even the puppets or Western oppressors that have dibs on that trade. And I also think these are modern slave trades, because they're not trading globally because they would like to, they're forced to. And that has changed my mind on so much in the way I consume. So also think about that. And I think the final thing was the linguistic piece, right? So I'll save it for a bit later, but I'm currently relearning 2 languages at the moment. And one was more for like an educational piece, because there's loads of works that I want to share with you, but like my reading level in like Punjabi and Urdu is dog shit, right? So I'm like, I have to refine that so I can share knowledge, right? And then the other one is more about, obviously my work is global, and like when I speak of oppression, it's not one group, right? But there's a certain group I'm really focused on at the moment, because I think they are about to flare up in the coming years. And I was like, oh, instead of me just speaking in English and hoping they understand English, I need to speak to them in like a common language that they understand, right? So my point there was that when we talk about the ability to care and grow things and have that exposure and really like a rich ecosystem that isn't dictated by oppression and like greed, language has a big part to do with that, right? And that's why I always say, like, as much as you can, learn the mother tongue, learn in the languages where the knowledge has been severed from, right? And don't worry about perfect pronunciation or whatever like that. Like, dip into it, because language has so much power, it has so much meaning. So it's actually like such a violent act that they sever people away from said languages so they can keep that ignorance and keep them from prospering, right? And then, can I tell you something? Let's look at celeb examples, because I have two really nice examples of Shatabishka. Also, very biasedly, Shatabishkas are some of my favorite energies. I really, really like this energy. The thing that you have to understand about Shatabishka, it very much is that cool fucking babe who hates everyone equally and wants no one's validation, right? They are some of the most open-minded, philosophical, really funny fuckers that you will ever meet, okay? And think about it. Shatabishka's power is the power to heal, right? This video is not about getting you to grow your own grapes, right? But we can heal people in different kinds of ways. And the two people that I really want to focus on, I truly believe their work is very healing. So number one is the comedian Robin Williams, right? This is a man who uses comedy to help people understand the most complex and vulnerable feelings we have, right? When you look at his films, they are the most profound exploration of human misery and trying to be happy, trying to understand chaos, and I think cultivate the little bit of joy and pleasure that this horrible world allows us to do, right? Then if you look at someone like J.R.R. Tolkien, he's the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings, right? One thing that I always really liked is, so whilst because he's kind of considered like the modern father of like mythology and kind of fantasy writing, but I was like, but even in his books, as you explore his work, he's showing you the beauty in people being different. And if you like, the underdog, even in the most dire of circumstances, even against big, big giants and like magic we don't understand and all of that, you can still succeed, but you succeed with people, community, and an open heart. Famously, right, I think, when Germany was going through like the Nazi regime, German publishers actually emailed J.R.R. Tolkien and was like, you have to prove that you're an Aryan race, right? Or something like that. And he wrote back, he was like, fuck off. I have no obligation to do so. And also, I'm sorry to say, I don't share the amazing blood of such great people like the Jews, right? So again, like when you talk about this ability to care and grow, don't think quite literal. You can heal and help people in so many different ways. And also, again, Shatabishka is ruled by Varuna, right? That is the god of cosmic justice. And again, this idea of like revealing truths. Think about how through their work, they help people explore concepts that you are not so different to other people and they are not so different to you. And they create room and space for people to explore complicated emotions that often we're told in capitalist societies, in oppressive societies, in societies that to this day are so manufactured by colonizers and their hate. Like, these are feelings we're told not to feel. These are feelings that are intentionally demonized and we're told are weird. So we say complicit and we're good little fucking servants. So again, like, as we get into the groove of this video, whatever talents and skills that you have, think about how you can use them to care for other people and grow really cool things. There is so much other shit you can do compared to consumerism. They are intentionally flooding you with consumerism so you never start the work or enjoy the passions or invoke those feelings that trouble them and oppose them. And the more you tap into these things, the more you explore, the more that you learn, wonderful things are going to happen. And on that note, let's look at our final Aquarius nakshatra. Finally, we have Bhuva Bhadra. That is Aquarius type 7 to 9. And it's all about learning something, fighting for something. You know, Bhuva Bhadra encapsulate this kind of experience of a fiery transformation of beliefs. And famously, it's actually symbolized by two crossed swords, right? So our ability to defend and attack. And as I reflect on everything that we've discussed, I think it's so apparent how much colonialism intentionally designed stuff to make us feel bad about wondering if things could be different, about doing stuff differently. They'll do anything and everything to manipulate us so we don't oppose them. I think that is abundantly clear, because to hijack people's creativity, right, to make them feel bad about naturally using whatever talent and skill plan that God had written for them, then impacts the way that people are caring for one another and also their ability to grow stuff together, then puts us in a really weird position where the things that they learn are only how to basically be a good little servant and slave to you. You will demonize anything that goes against whatever narrative that you're cooking up. And most importantly, you will fatigue them, shame them, and do whatever to make sure they don't fight back. So again, some of the most powerful shit you can do begins with learning, because when you learn, you will understand why there are these kind of deeper feelings of wanting a different life, of not agreeing with stuff, or essentially why you want to fight back. And then when you have that knowledge, not only do you feel more justified about doing what you're going to do, that also is going to give you the knowledge to create, to go and care, to grow stuff with people, right? It's a whole connected circle. So I think let's look at a final few examples of how colonial empires have actively seek to stop people learning and to dissuade them of fighting back. So when you look at your current circumstances, you understand once again, we are in the downfall of colonialism because what? It didn't go anywhere. We are our ancestors. In fact, we are the new ancestors, Hibiscuses. Let's begin by analysing the French Empire and what they did in North Africa, famously with Algeria and Morocco, right? So imagine after destroying their countries, butchering their people, severing them from everything that sustains them, grows them, nurtures them, right? Like actually allows them to flourish. These people are seeking to leave, right? They're seeking refuge. The French then go, on top of all the shitty things that they've done to them, you can only become a French citizen if you denounce everything that your people are. You have to pledge allegiance to assimilating with the French Empire. Think about that in the modern context, right? We look at Pouvoir Padra, which is all about fighting back, right? And imagine you destroy someone's safety and then you say, the only lifeboat I'm going to give you is if you pledge allegiance to be like us and not go against us. And then you can breathe. That's a rigged fight, is it not, Hibiscuses? I want you to think about your current situations. I know so deeply how much you lot care, and there's stuff that you're dying to speak about. There's shit that you really want to state your beliefs. But how many of you can't because you are scared of losing your jobs? How many of you can't because you are worried that you would lose the platforms? And it's the same thing. All the colonial powers have the same fucking blueprint, right? And you've got to remember, it's a really vicious intention to say the only way you'll be given safety is essentially you turn your back on your faith. Because I think even then in Morocco and Algeria, you had to denounce being Muslim. That was it specifically, right? You could only get French citizenship or some shot at life if you, I don't even know how you proved people would convert, oh God, unless they were making them eat pork or something crazy. But yeah, like you basically had to turn your back on everything. And can you think about the psychological damage that does to somebody? And then the other aspect is they had something known as Blackfoot, right? So how do I describe this? So in the midst of making them turn their backs on everything that they are, and in some ways is innately their identity, then there's this weird phase of you have floods of French settlers kind of come all the way into Morocco. Oh, actually, that makes me really feel really creepy, because I think if you go to Morocco today, there's loads of people who own like mansions and villas in Morocco who are like French European. Good God. But essentially, long story short, after they made them kind of pledge allegiance to the French Empire for their own safety, they then have this weird moment in time where the French own most of the land, and they can kind of use their gums or like mock them with certain aspects. But the French are allowed to do that. But if the Algerians or Morocco do that, you'll be penalized or criminalized. And that's weird psychology, right? So the same things you're wanting to defend, you will be demonized for, but your colonizer, your abuser, your oppressor can have all of that, and they can take to that, and it's all quite dandy and entertaining when they do it, but you can't, because then it's a threat. Oh. And I also think maybe it's a psychological tool of like kind of constantly humiliating them. It's a comparison thing, isn't it? Like, it is actually a comparison. Oh, it's so sick. But then also one could argue that like, so you acknowledge that we are who we think we are, and what you hate is because you're not us. So therefore, it's in your interest to make sure we don't see the power or the beauty or the value in these things, but you do, and you can keep the value that they bring. There's something really insidious in it, right? And then even then, the last thing I would say, because propaganda is also very legal, the French famously put in their own legal system with different tribes within Morocco and Algeria, which then meant these tribes lost the kind of legislation or autonomy that, again, was really rooted in social care, fairness, justice, and they would rule their tribes in a way that was similar to the French constitution and legal system. Then let's look at the Brits in the Caribbean, right? Let's talk about the plantation system and the creation of colorism, class, and the education, right? So as we know, right, the British Empire is the mother of racism and very much the fucking benefactor of slavery, right? In the midst of the violence that they have created, they also start educating people about why this violence is great and necessary. And then they start justifying why other people suffer more violence than others, right? So the plantation also is the creation of colorism, of class, of status. And the thing that's happening is they're saying the more that you're aligned or pleasant to the oppressor, the safer you will be. I don't need to give you a history lesson and all the fucking violence that like African slaves went through in the Caribbean, right? Or the people who were native to the fucking Caribbean went through. It's horrendous, right? Imagine in the midst of that terrorism, because that's what it is. I think we need to call these people terrorists way more, right? I've never seen more of a justification use of a label. You're then kind of doing divide and conquer, right? You're teaching them. You're like getting them to conform. And then finally, after that whole fucking thing, you then have the schools that are created. And those schools are just an extension of the colonizer to kind of, because you've got to remember, when slavery is abolished, and it hasn't, like, it's not abolished. When you look at everything happening in the modern day, does it look like we're free? Does it not just look like they've changed the costume of their spookiness and our dumb asses have been in the play for too long? Like, I'm at that point when I speak to you all, right? But then it's this very intentional thing to create schools that put all the victims and descendants in of slavery, of your violence, and then indoctrinate them into your ways of understanding things. That's why education and learning is such a powerful, powerful tool, and you have to be way more conscious of who you are learning from, right? So I talk a lot more about this on TikTok, right? But one thing I warned people about like 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, not everybody's meant to be religious. Everyone is spiritual, but not everybody's meant to be religious. And I put out this like post where I said like A, B, and C, when they have religious placements, they always create chaos and nastiness, but it's because they see religion as a tool to gain stuff. And then I remember having these chit chats with everybody that so I used to say like, welcome to the downfall of like Starbucks spirituality, right? I love a downfall if you haven't worked out. And And I said back in like what, 2022, a lot of you are kissing backsides that you're going to want to kick soon. And you will realize how much you have been manipulated by Starboard spirituality. And a big 2025, how many of you are horrified that your favorite astrologers, your favorite tarot readers, whatever the fucking spiritualists that you've been manipulated by are fascists? And they were showing you for a long time, hibiscuses. But you learn things through them. And that's why you felt the way you did about yourself, that like education and learning is really important. And so is the person teaching and giving that knowledge, because we pick up from them, right? And until we know any different, we just assume that's the way it is. So there is a direct link between the things that we are taught and our need to fight back, how we fight back, and what we think we're even fighting back against. And then this leads me maybe to like look at the Americans and what they did to the indigenous people of the Americas, right? They genocided them. That's when people are like, I can't believe America's with Israel. Of course America's with Israel, because Israel's doing what America did to the natives. Are you the same way people are like, I can't believe that Brits are supplying Israel with arms. Britain created Israel. Everything you see in Palestine, they practice on Punjab first. Like, there's just so much where I'm like, do you not see we are currently living through what our ancestors saw? And the difference is we are not meant to fall for the trickeries. You can never expect liberation, freedom, equality from the very same fucking hands that quite literally profit from your pain. I have some really interesting stuff to say in the coming years. And I promise you, there's a lot of countries where like on paper, oh yeah, we're independent. No, we're not, because when they made us independent, isn't it interesting? They intentionally made sure they divided up and destroyed all the things that opposed their empires, and they put their own puppets in place. You never want to be in a position where your ruling government comes from people who were allowed to march and protest during the occupation of your land. And the only reason they were allowed to march and protest is because they saw themselves as the oppressor and they aligned with the oppressor's belief. We've got a lot of unfinished business in history to solve, and we're going to get there, right? But to bring it all back together, look, when Rahu goes into Bhadra, you're being shown in so many ways how you weren't even given the correct start, right? And it is a big educational piece. I think it's great that we don't trust a lot anymore, right? I'm happy we don't trust media. I'm happy we are double thinking about why someone would tell us what they do and all of that. Because also, when you study a lot of different industries and sectors, unfortunately, a lot of the information knowledge we have stems from really horrific, racist, xenophobic intentions and all of that. So we have not really reached the greats of science, of knowledge, of information, but we're going to get there. And we get there because we start realizing how poisoned everything is. I don't think any country has the best society, because the politics we have is so much about becoming our oppressor. We have not reached the greats of humanity. I think the best is yet to come, but it starts with the educational piece. And we're only going to get there if, one, you finally break away, right? And you understand it's not a flex to be awarded or recognized or given certificates by the same fucking people who bet on you being stupid and complicit in their violence. And then once that educational piece happens, then we rock and roll, cowboy. Like, then the fight begins. Let me give you two celebrity examples before we look off this video, right? So one is Dr. Martin Luther King, famously at Bhadra, and the wonderful Polish scientist Marie Curie, right? Now, keep in mind, Bhadra is a fiery transformation of beliefs. So if we start with Dr. Martin Luther King, right? This is an African-American man who is born into the Jim Crow era, right? So on paper, slavery is abolished. Does it feel like it? Does it look like it? Does it function like it? Absolutely the fuck not, right? And he's at a time where he's literally being like, I need to be peaceful to show that we don't play into the stereotypes that they have of our people. And I need to show them we can do this differently, right? And again, a lot of that's rooted in education. It's rooted in learning how to fight back. This is a very eloquent, educated, like well-informed man. However, you know how it goes. the deeper he gets into his journey of learning like how to get liberation and equality, he realizes how rigged the game is. And he starts to clock on the same thing because he's known for his non-violence, right? They're banking on him being non-violent. They are banking on him being non-violent because he will then never really be a threat to dismantling them. And then look at it deeper. In the same breath, this man is promoting like peace, talking, education, like negotiation, mediation, pleading, right? Commodity. You've got the American president blackmailing him, sending spies on him, allowing hits out on him. And the whole time this man's like, peace, 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 peace. And ironically, just before he was publicly going to announce, this is not the way we get our liberty, they took him out. And even if you look at his own journeys a little bit deeper, originally he really does focus on like the racial segregation and the racism of it all. But then he starts looking deeper at the systems and structures. And then over time, you actually see Dr. Martin Luther King's work start to look at class, right? And he talks to like, he starts hitting on the points that really are a threat to an empire. Because be under no illusion, an empire has no problem giving you free speech, giving you liberation, because it still is expecting you will navigate the world and your societies and your businesses and your interest with the same systems and structures it implanted to extract wealth. You are more of a threat when you move away from those things and you no longer follow their education. Please, again, think about why they try to flood you so much with consumerism and taking from them and giving your pennies to them. It's very rigged, right? Then let's think about Marie Curie, right? So again, this is a Polish woman going to study in France in a time of great discrimination. Fun fact, women weren't allowed in educational institutions at that time, right? So you quite literally are seeing the importance of education in real time and why people are blocked off from it, but you're also seeing the fight in someone, right? This woman has fucking Nobel, is it called a Nobel Peace Prize? Whatever. But basically, she has scientific game-changing knowledge. She found that out in a fucking damp shed because they wouldn't let her in schools and universities. And she still fought, right? And the whole time, even when she collected this knowledge and she had this knowledge, they still seek to demonize her. And I think that's the thing, right? You're looking at two individuals who show the power of education and how it allows us to stand up to people, but you're also seeing how the fight changes them. And instead of being so egotistical and be like, no, but these are our beliefs, this is what we ran on, they understand the more that they learn, that they change, and there's no shame in going through a fiery transformation of beliefs. You should have no ego, right? Your identity is also kind of not your beliefs, and you need to be careful about oppressors making you feel like if your beliefs change, that means you won't hit your goal or you're compromising, when all it is you're learning more and you're understanding the mechanics around why you are suffering and why you're not thriving deeper, and you're getting closer to your liberation. You're getting closer to prosperity, because best believe they will do everything in their power to make sure you never feel comfortable to create. You don't know how to look after yours and your own, and let alone other people. You never are successful in growing anything. And then on top of that, they want you to feel stupid and scared of learning anything outside their lens. And finally, all of that contributes to you not being able to fight back. You see how it works, Hibiscus here? So the 5 things you can do instead of consume the poison from the colonizers or the flavors of the oppressors are the following. Number 1, create. They have intentionally hijacked your opportunities, your medium, your appetite to create. Reclaim it, right? Then this will lead you to learning how to care for something, right? And when you know how to care for yourself and something, you can also care for others. That care also creates growth, right? And then that growth will invoke you learning more, right? And when you learn more, you fight. You challenge, you oppose, because you have knowledge to say and you have the words that this is not right and I think this is functioning in such a way that I can't be happy ever. These are cures for consumerism. And if you can cure your consumerism, you can liberate yourself. But you have to learn how to master it. Other than that, I'm all talked out. I got no battery, but I hope that helped. And I will see you in the next installment where I will share with you how I have been fighting colonialism through my consumer habits. Bye, Hibiscuses.